Welcome, friends. You are watching the Ruslan Belov channel, and in today's episode, we will break down the situation in Ukraine as of February 23rd, 2026. Today turned out to be quite eventful with significant developments, so without further ado, let's get straight to business. So there are literally seconds left until the 24th, and against this backdrop, both sides of the conflict are making loud statements. Both the head of the office of the President of Ukraine and the President himself are taking the floor. The essence of all these statements boils down to a single position. The Ukrainian side has no intention of withdrawing its units from the front line or pulling troops out of the Donbass. A wide range of explanations and arguments are provided to justify this decision. In addition to this, today both SYRSKYI, the commander-in-chief of the armed forces of Ukraine, and Zelensky began appealing to some very notable figures. Zelensky, in particular, stated that Ukrainian forces have managed to restore control over more than 300 square kilometers of territory. Following this publication, SYRSKYI clarified the data, reporting that as a result of the counter-offensive, the Ukrainian side has already returned 400 square kilometers back under its control. And of course, the main question that arises here is, what specific area are they talking about? What exactly do SYRSKYI and Zelensky mean? To figure this out, let's go to the line of combat contact and try to understand what both the military and political leaders are talking about. And what they are referring to is the Battle of Zaporizhzhia, which, judging by pro-Ukrainian sources, is still ongoing. At the moment, the Zaporizhzhia direction seems to exist in two parallel realities. The first reality is this: the Russian Federation is holding the front line completely stable. The situation is maximally steady, and Russian units are systematically, step by step, advancing towards settlements such as Verkhnya Tersa, Hirka, Doroapilia, and Kostyantynivka, specifically on this sector of the front. Such is the picture painted by pro-Russian sources. Pro-Ukrainian sources, however, represented by SYRSKYI and Zelensky, tell us something else. According to their version, it is specifically in this area that a large-scale Ukrainian counter-offensive has unfolded, during which the Ukrainian side has managed to significantly improve its positions north of the settlement of Kupyansk. Let's take a look at how the map in this area has been adjusted according to data from various pro-Ukrainian, pro-Western and neutral mapping resources. So before us is the situation as of February 13th, 2026. The counter-offensive itself in this direction, according to open-source data, started approximately on February 6th to 8th. However, any noticeable and reliable map adjustments only began to appear around February 13th to 14th. By the end of the 14th, according to pro-Ukrainian mappers, the front line here had been adjusted, and this information was partially confirmed by pro-Russian sources as well. Subsequently, more and more data regarding the counter-offensive in this direction kept coming in, which led to even more substantial map adjustments, this time relying on neutral mapping services as well. Furthermore, the counter-offensive in this direction has once again found confirmation from pro-Ukrainian sources. The pro-Russian side is not commenting on what is happening at all and operates exclusively with statistical reports from the Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation, as well as data from the Vostok East Troop Grouping, according to which the Ukrainian side is suffering significant losses during this counter-offensive. Closer to the 17th, or rather already after February 17th, the pace of the counter-offensive began to gradually decrease. Map adjustments continue to appear, but they are already much more modest in scale compared to what was observed just a few days earlier. And today, pro-Western sources are fully revealing this sector of the front. Frankly, it is completely unclear where they are getting their information from and what video materials they are relying on. Nevertheless, today a significant portion of pro-Western and pro-Ukrainian experts and mappers are making precisely these adjustments to the maps, and according to this data, Ukrainian units have supposedly managed to regain control over the aforementioned 300 square kilometers. However, this information has not been confirmed anywhere or by anything. If we try to transfer the designated territory onto our map, then, according to the claims of certain pro-Ukrainian and pro-Western analysts, the armed forces of Ukraine have managed over the past few days to take full control of all the territory that was previously designated as a grey zone, plus one additional sector. At the same time, according to this version, The Russian side is currently concentrating its defense along the Huliaipol to Uspenivka line and further in the direction of Velika Novosilka. This extensive fortified area, thoroughly penetrated by hundreds of strongpoints, is precisely the line that Ukrainian formations are supposedly reaching right now. But I want to reiterate once again, there is extremely little information in the public domain capable of confirming this data. Moreover, practically not a single video has been published where one could see raised flags or any other visible evidence of what has happened. Therefore, at this stage, all we can do is wait for further developments. But in all likelihood, if this counter-offensive is indeed taking place, sooner or later the relevant information will be fully made public, and then it will simply become impossible to hide its existence or invent legends around it. So we are waiting for additional data, and perhaps tomorrow or the day after, new video materials will appear online. Next, we move to the Doroapilia direction. No changes have been recorded here today. The next stop on our route is the Kostyantynivka sector of the front. There are important adjustments here. The Russian side continues assault operations in the southwestern part of the city, aiming to consolidate its hold on the captured lines. According to some pro-Russian analysts, Russian forces have managed to improve their positions in the southwestern area. In addition, video materials are appearing online from the central and southern parts of the settlement. In this footage, we observe Ukrainian military personnel moving on motorcycles through the southern part of Kostyantynivka. The massive destruction that has engulfed the city is clearly visible, especially characteristic of its southern neighborhoods. The majority of buildings here are either damaged or completely destroyed. The Russian side does not stop launching massive strikes using aviation and heavy flamethrower systems. Fierce fighting is currently underway for the southern part of the city. Russian forces are aiming to confidently entrench themselves in the southwestern area and create a bridgehead there that will allow them to develop the offensive in a northern direction and complete the battle for the southern part of the city. In fact, we are currently at a turning point in the battle for Kostyantynivka. If the Ukrainian side loses control of the southern part of the city, it will only be a matter of time before it loses the rest of the city as well. In parallel, Russian units continue assault operations at the Rozhkishin line, as well as in the area of the settlement of Doroapilia. Airstrikes with aerial bombs are being carried out on the forward positions of the armed forces of Ukraine here. Most likely, adjustments should be expected in this sector in the near future as well. We continue our review and move to the Sloviansk direction. Significant adjustments have been recorded here today. Pro-Ukrainian mappers have reflected a very important change along the line of Nikiforivka, the settlement of Lipivka. This is exactly the adjustment recorded by pro-Ukrainian sources. According to this data, Russian units have essentially managed to break through the defense of the armed forces of Ukraine, north and northwest of Nikiforivka, as well as north of Fedorivka Druha, effectively taking this settlement into a semi-encirclement. Fedorivka Druha is the largest and most important strongpoint of the Ukrainian troops in the Sloviansk direction. If the Ukrainian side loses control of this settlement and the surrounding forest areas, it will have to completely reconsider its entire strategy for the future defense of Sloviansk. Under such a scenario, the Russian side, relying on Fedorivka Druha and the settlements of Dibrova and Lipivka, will gain the opportunity to calmly develop its offensive not only to the north in the direction of Oleksandrivka, but quite possibly will begin to test the strength of the Ukrainian defense on the banks of the SYRSKYI Donbass Canal, despite the fact that fairly powerful fortified positions of the armed forces of Ukraine are concentrated here. Moving on to the Lyman sector. Today, the first adjustments appeared on the map in the eastern part of the city. The front line is changing in this way. The Ukrainian side published video materials demonstrating strikes on the positions of the Russian army on the very outskirts of the settlement. Based on these videos, the corresponding adjustment is being made. Next in line is the Kupiansk sector of the front. Today, pro-Russian sources published extremely important video footage from the central part of the town of Kupyansk v Sloviansk. Here is this footage. The video was published by a pro-Russian Telegram channel. According to the author of the post, it depicts 3 Russian servicemen and apparently a dog moving through the central area of the town. The author insists that these are specifically Russian soldiers. although from this angle it is difficult to see this with absolute certainty. However, perhaps some of the viewers will be able to do so. One way or another, Russian servicemen were moving behind the specified building, approximately along the indicated road. Where they came from and how they ended up there, answering this question is not easy, but the fact remains. Russian units have been recorded in the central and possibly already in the southern part of Kupiansk Sloviansk. This, in turn, indicates that the Ukrainian side has lost firm control over the southern area of the town. Based on this data, a minor adjustment has been made to the map. Although, I repeat, the mechanism of the Russian servicemen's penetration to this point remains unclear. Perhaps they came from the north like this, or perhaps like that. It is difficult to say with certainty. We only made the adjustment along the most logical route, in our opinion, by which it was possible to reach this point. There is no certainty here whatsoever. Nevertheless, the map has been adjusted, and more information will likely arrive from this direction in the near future. Speaking of the northern sectors, very high activity has been recorded for several consecutive days in the area of the settlement of Kozycha. The Russian side is conducting intensive reconnaissance of the terrain here, judging by the latest reports, as well as the fact that an increased intensity of fighting has been noted in the areas of Kozycha and Veterinane in recent days. One gets the impression that the Russian side is preparing a small tactical offensive in this direction. Its likely goal is to push Ukrainian multiple launch rocket systems and HIMARS complexes further away from the state border and from Belgorod, thereby reducing the ability of Ukrainian units to strike the energy infrastructure facilities of this city. Thus, it is highly likely that an offensive operation could begin here in the near future, designed to somehow reduce the intensity of the shelling of Belgorod. In the Sumy direction, the Russian army is actively advancing towards the settlements of Korchakivka, Novosych, Mariina, and Kropivshchina. These are precisely the adjustments recorded in this sector. The information is coming from various pro-Russian sources. Overall, a fairly high intensity of combat operations by Russian forces is also noted here. A fairly powerful Russian offensive is expected in this direction in the near future. Apparently, it is now only a matter of time. As soon as more or less stable weather sets in, Russian units will be able to confidently advance towards this settlement. And overall, we see that in the next 24 hours, the culmination of the winter military campaign will arrive, after which we will gradually and smoothly begin to transition to the start of the spring military campaign, which, in all likelihood, will also bring many interesting events and grounds for analysis. There are only a few hours left until the 4-year anniversary of the start of the conflict in Ukraine. This is an extremely tense period during which we should expect provocations, special operations, and loud statements from both sides. The winter military campaign is reaching its culmination, and the night of February 24th could be marked by something truly serious. On the eve, the night of February 22nd, Russia launched a massive strike on Ukraine's energy infrastructure using hundreds of drones and dozens of missiles. In response, from 2 p.m. on the 22nd until the morning of February 23rd, the Ukrainian side carried out several waves of strikes deep into Russian territory. In total, according to open data, about 400 drones were involved. However, it must be understood, the vast majority of them were probably so-called decoys, cheap dummy devices without a payload, whose task was to deplete the Russian air defense system and force it to expend expensive interceptor missiles. Real combat value, in all likelihood, was represented by only 10 to 20 units out of the entire swarm. The first waves were directed mainly towards Moscow. All drones in this direction were intercepted, and not a single confirmed hit was recorded. In the Belgorod direction, Russian air defenses were also actively working, but here, judging by video recordings, an energy facility was still hit, presumably the SYRSKYI substation northwest of Belgorod. The most resonant was the strike on the Kalykino oil pumping station in the Almetievsk area. This very facility is the starting point of the Druzhba pipeline, through which Russian oil is transported to the west, to Hungary and Slovakia. It is noteworthy that shortly before this, the prime ministers of both countries, Viktor Orban and Robert Fico, essentially issued an ultimatum to Ukraine: either resume pumping oil through Druzhba or lose electricity supplies. Orban also threatened to block a 90 billion loan and the 20th package of sanctions against Russia. The strike on Almatyevsk looks like a direct response to this pressure, a kind of demonstration that technical failures on the Russian side can also become a weighty argument in this political game. The Russian side also launched retaliatory strikes. According to the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense, 127 drones and one Iskander-M ballistic missile were used during the night. Energy facilities and transport infrastructure came under attack, in particular in the areas of Chornomorsk and Mykolaiv, where substations, industrial buildings, and railway transport were damaged. Satellite images from the Kropivnitsky area show numerous craters near the local airfield. Apparently, it was the main target of the strike. That is all for today, dear friends. Thank you for watching, subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and all the best to you.